This video brought to you by the Bose Headset 10.
Hello everyone, this is Paul Bertorelli reporting for AVweb, and welcome to our special coverage of AOPA Expo 2008 in San Jose, California. 2 weeks before Expo kicked off here in San Jose, I traveled to AOPA's headquarters in Frederick, Maryland for a long sit-down interview with outgoing President Phil Boyer. This is the first of 3 AVweb video segments on that interview.
Phil, thanks for being with us. Thanks for inviting me to Frederick. I'd like to start with a brief summary of your career. You joined AOPA in 1991, just as the industry was recovering from one of its many slumps, I suppose. It has been an eventful 17 years. My short list includes Cessna re-entering the market, Cirrus, Columbian Diamond with the composite revolution. We saw a reform of GA liability. AOPA helped push GPS to become a navigation standard. We've seen fuel prices spike. Diesel engines appeared, VLJs appeared, user fees, and the 9/11 attacks nearly stopped us cold. Looking back on that, what stands out in your mind during your term as AOPA president as being something that AOPA accomplished that stands above all else during that period?
Well, to be cute, I'd say all of the above. In some method, you've named some industry milestones, you've named some regulatory issues, you've named some legislative issues, but I guess we're here as the voice of some 415,000 members to do what they tell us is important to them. You went back to 1991. I would have to say that the industry really wasn't in a recovery there. It was in the slump. And so one of the milestones that occurred was our saying finally, after really ignoring the issue under past AOPA administrations of product liability reform, let's get in this thing. And it was, if you think about it for a second, kind of unusual because we represent you, the pilots and consumers. And product liability laws are there to protect the consumers. If you certainly had an unfortunate accident and your family wanted to sue because of some malfunction of a plane, you need those laws to be enforced. But members were telling us loud and clear, I'm willing to give my right up to sue if we can help of companies like Diamond and like Cirrus and Columbia at the time would not have occurred had the old laws been on the books.
If you look at that list, is there anything on that short list that surprises you that you didn't think would happen?
Not really. I guess like most Americans, whether it be aviation or not, never did I think that our fondest device, the airplane, would be used as a weapon of mass destruction in 9/11. So I guess that was the surprise to all of us, but we don't need to be in aviation.
Was 9/11 your biggest challenge professionally?
I don't think so. I mean, we were doing what we've been chartered to do since back in 1939. So it's almost back to our roots after 9/11. Once again, let's try to get planes back in the air. Everybody was flying except probably the most important segment, VFR pilots in nice weather in large cities. So we did what we were supposed to do. It was an uphill battle because the country was in a state of chaos. And once again, I keep being reminded daily, even this morning we had a meeting on this, that it was airplanes that were responsible for this tragedy.
Let's segue right into government regulations. From the outside looking in, I think journalists and pilots and owners seem to see some encroachment on aviation from government. Seems like every week we see something. Is that an accurate assessment, or is it? Are we just being paranoid about this?
Well, I would never want to call my members paranoid, but I would have to say that in my history with aviation, it goes back 40 years, I would say over the last couple decades, lots has relaxed. Especially as we look at our favorite agency, of course, those who are here to help us, the FAA. A lot of those rules have relaxed rather than tightened. Probably what you're sensing from your constituents is the security area, where it definitely has tightened. And it's been very difficult to put our arms around who's the demon. I call it poking at ghosts. Who's responsible for this rule? Well, they'll say things like this. Secret Service wants this. DOD wants this. DHS wants this. But if we look at the FAA rules, Medicals have been relaxed some. We now have 5-year medicals for some. We have more relaxed rules with LSA. So a lot has been backed off in that regard to the better. And the FAA is kind of the responsible party to implement what these other agencies have done. But most of them have come out of airspace, airport, and other regulation.
And that leads us into politics. We're recording this 2 weeks before the presidential election. It seems likely that the House will pick up Democratic seats and the Senate will too. The presidential election we don't know about, but if the Congress is more Democratic than it is now, does that matter to AOPA and GA's fortunes? Are you able to say?
In the main, if we look back over history, we have tended to fare better under a Democratic Congress. If you think about it for a second, if you take the socialist side a bit and say more subsidies, etc., we fare better under that kind of thinking than we do on everything has to pay its own way. Because in this regard, whatever party it be, but in terms of the Democrats, they tend to recognize a value that may not be directly attributable to what's being spent. The value of general aviation, outlying airports, communities in the middle of America or unserved states by airlines, and the Democrats consider that to a greater degree. And we've fared pretty well in the last few years under leadership now in the aviation committees in the House that are Democratic.
All right, thanks very much for speaking with us, Bill.